God, carry me through the storm with the strength of the Holy Spirit. There are storms you prepare for, and then there are the ones that arrive without warning. No sign, no signal, no time to get ready. One moment everything feels stable, predictable, under control. The next moment, something shifts, and suddenly you are in the middle of something you did not choose, something you do not understand, something you cannot stop. And the hardest part is not even what is happening around you. It is what starts happening inside you. Your thoughts begin to race, your emotions begin to react. You try to make sense of it, to find a reason, to regain control. But nothing responds the way it used to. The strategies that once worked no longer hold. The strength you relied on starts to feel insufficient, and that is where fear quietly enters. Not always loud, not always visible, but present. The fear of not knowing how this will end, the fear of losing more than you already have, the fear that maybe this storm is bigger than what you can handle. So you try to hold everything together. You try to stay strong, to keep moving, to act like you are still in control. But deep down, there is a truth you cannot ignore anymore. You are tired, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Tired of trying to figure everything out, tired of carrying the weight alone, tired of pretending that you are managing something that is clearly beyond your strength. And this is where something important needs to be said, even if it challenges everything you are feeling right now. What if you were never meant to carry this storm by yourself? What if the reason you feel overwhelmed is not because you are weak, but because you are trying to hold something that was never yours to hold? Because there is a difference between surviving a storm and being carried through it. And right now, you are about to understand that difference. Because what feels like loss of control might actually be the beginning of something deeper, something that will change the way you see your struggle, something that will reveal what has been holding you this entire time. And it begins the moment everything in your life shifts without asking for your permission. When life shifts without warning. There is a specific kind of impact that comes when life changes suddenly, not gradually, not predictably, but instantly. One moment you are standing on something that feels solid, and the next moment that foundation no longer feels the same. It creates disorientation. Because your mind is built to understand patterns, it looks for continuity, for logic, for progression. But when something shifts without warning, that pattern breaks. And when it breaks, your mind struggles to catch up. You start asking questions immediately. What happened? Why now? How did things change so quickly? And the more you try to find answers, the more you realize that there are none that fully satisfy you. Because not everything that happens follows a timeline you can understand. And that lack of explanation creates instability, not just around you, but within you. Your sense of direction begins to weaken. Your confidence in what you thought was certain starts to fade. Even small decisions feel heavier because the ground you were standing on no longer feels predictable. And that is where the internal struggle intensifies. Because when life shifts without warning, your instinct is to recover control as fast as possible. You try to fix what changed. You try to restore what was lost. You try to bring things back to what they were before. But what if going back is not the direction? What if this shift was not just an interruption, but a redirection? Because sometimes what feels like everything falling apart is actually something being moved into place. Not in a way you expected, not in a way you would have chosen, but in a way that serves a purpose you cannot yet see. And the reason this feels so uncomfortable is because it forces you into a position where control is no longer an option. You cannot predict what comes next. You cannot manage every outcome. You cannot rely on the same certainty you had before, and that leads you into the next realization, a realization that challenges one of the deepest assumptions you have always carried. The moment you realize you are not in control. There comes a moment in every storm where you stop trying to fix everything, not because you found the answer, but because you realize you do not have it. Not because you gave up, but because something inside you recognizes a truth you have been resisting. You are not in control. At first, that realization feels uncomfortable. It feels like loss, like something was taken from you, because control gives a sense of safety. It creates the illusion that if you do the right things, think the right way, act at the right time, you can influence the outcome. But this storm does not respond to your effort. You try to adjust. You try to push harder. You try to think your way out of it, but nothing moves the way it used to. And slowly, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. This is beyond you. And that is where frustration begins to turn into something deeper, because when control disappears, vulnerability takes its place. You are forced to face what you cannot change, what you cannot predict, what you cannot resolve on your own. And that exposure creates tension. You start asking questions that go beyond the situation. What if I cannot fix this? What if this does not change? What if I am not strong enough? And those questions do not come from weakness. They come from honesty. Because for the first time, you are no longer pretending that you have everything under control. You are no longer hiding behind strength that is starting to feel unstable. You are seeing your limits clearly. And that is not a setback, that is a turning point. Because as long as you believe you are in control, you will carry weight that was never meant for you. You will keep trying to manage outcomes that are not yours to define. You will continue exhausting yourself, trying to sustain something that is too heavy for your own strength. But when that illusion breaks, something else becomes possible. Dependence. Not forced, not weak, but real. A dependence that does not come from desperation, but from recognition. Recognition that there is something greater than your ability. Something that sees beyond what you can see, something that can hold what you cannot carry. And this is where the shift begins, because losing control is not the end of stability, it is the beginning of trust. Not trust in circumstances, not trust in outcomes, but trust in who is present within the storm. And that changes everything. Because now, instead of trying to control what is happening, you begin to ask a different question. If I am not in control, then what is actually happening here? And that question leads you into something even more personal. Because once control is removed, your mind starts interpreting the storm in a way that feels directed, intentional, almost like it was meant specifically for you. Why the storm feels personal. There is a point in the storm where it stops feeling random and starts feeling targeted, not just something that happened, but something that happened to you, specifically, intentionally. And that thought changes everything, because once the storm feels personal, it becomes heavier. You begin to internalize it. You stop seeing it as a situation and start seeing it as a reflection of your choices, your past, your worth, even your relationship with God. And without realizing it, the storm moves from around you into you. You start asking deeper questions. Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Why does it feel like everything is against me? And those questions are not just about understanding, they are about searching for meaning. Because the human mind cannot stay in chaos without trying to assign purpose. It needs a reason, it needs something to hold on to. And when no clear answer comes, it creates one. Sometimes that answer becomes self-blame. Sometimes it becomes the belief that you are being punished. Sometimes it becomes the idea that God is allowing this because something is wrong with you. And that is where the storm becomes dangerous. Not because of what is happening externally, but because of what you begin to believe internally. Because when you believe the storm is personal, you start carrying it differently. You carry it with guilt. You carry it with confusion. You carry it with a quiet sense of being singled out. But listen carefully. Not everything that feels personal is intentional. in the way you think. There is a difference between something being directed at you and something being used for you. And right now, your perception is being shaped more by your pain than by truth, because pain narrows your vision. It makes everything feel closer, heavier, more direct. It takes a moment and turns it into a message. But not every message your pain sends is accurate. The storm is not proof that you are being targeted. It is evidence that you are being taken through something. There is movement in this, even if it does not feel like it. There is direction in this, even if it feels chaotic. There is purpose in this, even if it feels unfair. And the moment you begin to separate what you feel from what is real, something starts to shift. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you start asking, what is this doing in me? That question changes your position completely, because now, instead of standing as a victim of the storm, you begin to observe it as part of a process that is not here to destroy you, but to expose something deeper. Because what comes next is where the storm stops challenging your understanding and starts challenging your strength. When strength stops working, there comes a moment in the storm where everything you used to rely on stops being enough. Not because you did something wrong, not because you stopped trying, but because the situation you are in has reached a level where your natural strength cannot carry it anymore. And that is where things begin to feel different. At first, you try harder. You push more. You tell yourself to stay strong, to keep going, to not let this break you. You repeat the same patterns that worked before. You try to stay positive. You try to stay focused. You try to stay in control. But nothing responds. The effort is there, but the result is not. And slowly, something inside you begins to weaken. Not your will, but your capacity. You start noticing that what once felt manageable now feels heavy. What once felt simple now feels overwhelming. Even small things begin to require more energy than you have, and the strength you were counting on starts to feel unreliable. That realization is uncomfortable because strength was your identity. It was the thing that kept you moving, the thing that gave you confidence, the thing that made you feel like no matter what happened, you would find a way through it. But now, that strength is not responding the same way, and that forces a question you never wanted to ask. What happens when I am not strong enough? That question is not weakness, it is honesty. Because for the first time, you are facing a situation where your ability is not sufficient, where your effort cannot guarantee an outcome, where your strength cannot control what is happening. And instead of seeing that as failure, you need to see it for what it really is, a transition. Because the strength that got you here is not the strength that will carry you forward. There is a different kind of strength that this moment is introducing. One that is not based on effort. One that is not sustained by control. One that does not depend on how much you can handle on your own, but to access it, something has to shift. You have to stop trying to prove that you can carry everything. You have to release the need to appear strong in a way that is no longer real. You have to allow yourself to recognize that there are moments in life where your role is not to hold everything together, but to stop holding everything at all. And that feels like surrender. Not giving up, but letting go of what was never yours to sustain. Because as long as you keep trying to carry it with your own strength, you will continue to feel exhausted. But the moment you release it, something else begins to take over. Something that does not run out. Something that does not depend on your emotional state. Something that remains steady even when you feel unstable. And that is where the shift begins to happen. Because once your strength stops working, you become aware of a different kind of support. One that has been there the entire time, one that has been holding you even when you thought you were holding everything yourself. And what you are about to realize next will expose a truth that changes how you see every moment you thought you were about to fall apart. The exhaustion. no one talks about. There is a level of exhaustion that does not show on your face, that no one around you can fully see. You keep moving, you keep functioning, you keep answering when people ask if you are okay. But inside, something feels drained in a way that rest does not fix. It is not just physical, it is deeper. It's the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying thoughts that never stop, from holding emotions you cannot fully release, from trying to stay strong for too long without knowing when relief will come. You go to sleep tired and wake up tired. Not because you did too much, but because your mind never really turned off, because your spirit has been processing more than you can explain, because even in silence you have been fighting something internally. And the hardest part is that this kind of exhaustion feels invisible. People may see you and assume you are fine. They see you still showing up, still doing what needs to be done, but they do not feel the weight behind every action. They do not hear the constant tension in your thoughts. They do not see how much effort it takes just to maintain what used to feel normal. And after a while, you start asking yourself something quietly. How much longer can I keep going like this? That question is not dramatic, it is real. Because exhaustion changes how you think. It lowers your resistance. It makes everything feel heavier than it actually is. It reduces your ability to see clearly. It makes even hope feel distant. And in that state, the storm feels stronger than it really is, not because it grew, but because you are tired. And that is where many people misinterpret what is happening. They think they are losing strength. They think they are falling apart. They think they are reaching their limit. But what if this exhaustion is not a sign that you are breaking? What if it is a sign that you have been carrying something you were never meant to carry alone? Because exhaustion does not always come from what you are going through. It comes from how you are holding it. You have been trying to manage everything internally, trying to control outcomes, process emotions, maintain stability, and keep moving forward, all at the same time. That is too much for one person. And your exhaustion is not failure. It is feedback. It is revealing that your current way of holding this storm is unsustainable, not because you are weak, but because you were never designed to carry it this way. And this is where something begins to shift, because when exhaustion reaches a certain level, it forces a decision. Either you continue trying to hold everything together, or you begin to release what is overwhelming you. And that release does not happen through effort. It happens through recognition. Recognition that there is something else present in this storm. Something that has been sustaining you even when you felt like you had nothing left. Because the truth is, you should have already collapsed. You should have already stopped. You should have already given up. But you did not. And that leads to a question that changes everything. If it was not your strength that kept you going, then what was it? The invisible hand holding you together. There were moments when everything inside you said stop, moments when your thoughts were heavy, your emotions were unstable, and your strength felt completely gone. And yet, you did not fall apart. You came close. Closer than anyone knows, but something held you. Not loudly, not dramatically, not in a way that drew attention. It was quiet, almost unnoticeable in the moment. But it was there, consistent, steady, present in a way that did not depend on your awareness. And now you start to realize that was not you. Because if it depended only on your strength, you would have already broken. There were decisions you almost made that would have taken you in the wrong direction, but you paused. There were moments where your emotions could have overwhelmed you, but something slowed you down. There were situations that could have gone worse, but somehow they did not. That was not coincidence. That was intervention. The Holy Spirit does not always reveal himself through visible change. Sometimes he reveals himself through preservation, through keeping you together when everything inside you is under pressure, through sustaining you when your natural capacity reaches its limit. And the reason you did not fully recognize it is because you were focused on what was not changing. You were looking for external signs. But his work was internal. He was stabilizing your thoughts when they started to spiral. He was restraining your reactions when emotions rose too quickly. He was guiding your steps in subtle ways, even when you thought you were moving on your own. That is how he operates. Not always by removing the storm, but by keeping you intact within it. And that changes how you interpret everything you have been through, because now, instead of asking why you felt so close to breaking, you begin to see how you were kept from it. You begin to notice that every time you reached a point where you thought you could not go further, something extended your capacity just enough to take one more step, just enough to get through one more day, just enough to not give up completely. That is not human endurance. That is spiritual support, and the more you recognize it, the clearer it becomes. You were never holding yourself together. You were being held, even when you were unaware of it, even when you thought you were alone, even when nothing around you gave you evidence of help. There was a presence operating within you, sustaining you in ways you could not measure at the time. And now that you begin to see it, something shifts in your understanding. Because if you were being held then, when you felt weakest, then maybe your survival was never your responsibility. And that realization leads to something deeper, because now the question is no longer, how did I make it through? The question becomes, why did I not fall apart? Why you did not fall apart? There were moments when everything pointed to collapse. Not just difficulty, not just pressure, but the kind of weight that should have broken you completely. The kind of situation where, if someone else described it to you, you would say there is no way they could carry that. And yet, you are still here. Not untouched, not unchanged, but still standing. And that raises a question that cannot be ignored anymore. Why did you not fall apart? Because if you are honest with yourself, there were times when you were sure you would. Times when your thoughts were unstable, when your emotions were heavy, when your strength felt non-existent. You were not at your best. You were not at your strongest. You were not in control. So what kept you? Because it was not discipline alone. It was not mindset alone. It was not your ability alone. There were moments when all of those things were not enough, and still something held. That something was not visible at the time. It did not come with explanation. It did not come with a clear sign that you could point to and say, this is why I made it. But it was there. Because collapse is not just about pressure, it is about the absence of support. And even when you felt alone, support was present, you just could not see it yet. There were invisible boundaries around you, limits that your situation could not cross, moments where things could have gone further, but they stopped, reactions that could have escalated, but they softened, decisions that could have led you away, but something held you back. That is not randomness, that is protection. And protection does not always feel like comfort. Sometimes it feels like resistance, sometimes it feels like delay, sometimes it feels like confusion, but its purpose is the same, to keep you from breaking in a way you cannot recover from. And now, looking back, you begin to see a pattern. Every time you reached your limit, something extended you. Every time you felt like you were about to give up, something interrupted that decision. Every time the pressure increased, your ability to endure increased just enough. Not all at once, not in a way that removed the struggle, but in a way that kept you moving, step by step, moment by moment. And that reveals something important. You were never left alone with the weight. You were supported within it, which means your survival was not an accident. It was sustained. And if you were sustained through everything that should have broken you, then there is a truth you need to face. You were not carrying this by yourself, even when it felt like you were. And once that truth settles, it leads to a realization that changes how you see your role in this storm. Because maybe the reason you feel so exhausted is not because the storm is too heavy. but because you have been trying to carry something that was never yours to carry. The difference between carrying and being carried. There is a difference that changes everything, but most people never stop to recognize it. You have been living as if your role in this storm was to carry it, to manage it, to hold it together, to make sure nothing falls apart completely. And that is why you feel exhausted. Because carrying something means the weight depends on you. It means if you let go, everything collapses. It means the responsibility stays on your shoulders, even when your strength is gone. So you hold tighter, you try harder, you push beyond your limits, not because you want to, but because you believe you have to. But what if that belief is the problem? What if you were never meant to carry this storm? Because there is a difference between carrying something and being carried through it. When you are carrying, everything depends on your effort. When you are being carried, your responsibility shifts. You are no longer the source of strength. You are the one being sustained. And that is difficult to accept. Because being carried requires something that goes against your instincts. It requires release, not giving up, not quitting, but letting go of the idea that everything depends on you, letting go of the need to control every outcome, letting go of the pressure to hold everything together. And that feels uncomfortable, because control feels safer than trust. Even when control is exhausting, it still gives the illusion that you are doing something, that you are managing the situation, that you are responsible for keeping things from falling apart. But the truth is, things were never fully in your control to begin with. You were carrying weight that exceeded your capacity, and now your exhaustion is revealing it. You are tired because you have been holding something that was never yours to sustain. And the moment you begin to see that, something shifts. You start to question your role in this storm. Am I trying to carry something that God is already holding? Because if He is holding it, then your effort to carry it is not helping. It is only exhausting you. And that realization changes your position completely. You stop fighting to maintain control. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop measuring your strength by how much you can carry, and instead, you begin to trust, not blindly, not passively, but intentionally. You begin to allow yourself to be supported, to be guided, to be sustained by something that does not depend on your emotional state. Because being carried does not mean you do nothing. It means you move differently. You move without the weight of responsibility for everything. You move with the awareness that you are not alone in this process. You move knowing that even when you feel unstable, something is holding you steady, and that changes how the storm affects you. Because now, instead of resisting it with everything you have, you begin to move through it with a different kind of strength. Not yours, given, sustained, consistent. And once you begin to live from that place, another question begins to surface. If God is carrying you, then why does the storm still exist? When God does not remove the storm, this is where the struggle becomes deeper, because once you begin to understand that you are not alone, that you are being sustained, that something greater is carrying you, a new question rises that is harder to ignore. If God is with me, why is this still happening? Because if He has the power to calm the storm, why does He allow it to continue? That question is real, not rebellious, not wrong, but honest. Because part of you expected that once God stepped in, everything would change, that the storm would stop, the pressure would lift, the situation would resolve, that His presence would automatically remove what is causing the pain. But that is not always how He works. There are moments when God does not remove the storm because He is doing something within it. And that is difficult to accept, because relief feels like the answer, escape feels like the solution. But what if the storm is not just something to survive? What if it is something being used? Because when the storm remains, it reveals something that comfort never could. It shows what is stable and what is not. It exposes what you were depending on. It confronts what you tried to avoid. And in that confrontation, something begins to shift. Not around you, but within you. You begin to change how you respond. You begin to see things differently. You begin to detach from what once defined you. And even though the storm is still present, its effect on you starts to change. Because now it is no longer just pressure, it becomes process. And that changes the way you experience it. Instead of asking only, "How do I get out of this?" you begin to ask, "What is this doing in me?" That question opens a different perspective, because now the storm is not just something happening to you. It becomes something shaping you, not to harm you, but to form you. There is a moment in Matthew chapter 8, verse 23 to 27, where the disciples are in the storm with Jesus. The storm is real. The fear is real. The waves are real. And yet Jesus is there. The presence of God did not prevent the storm, but it changed the outcome of it. And that is what you are starting to understand. God's presence does not always remove the storm immediately, but it ensures that the storm does not have the final word over you. Because if the storm ended too soon, some things inside you would remain the same. And what is being built right now requires pressure. It requires resistance. It requires a process that cannot happen in comfort. So the storm remains. Not as punishment, not as abandonment, but as a place of transformation. And once you begin to see it this way, something shifts inside you again. Because now, instead of only feeling the storm, you begin to observe what it is revealing. And what it reveals next will show you something about yourself that you could not see before. The storm as a revealing force. You thought the storm was only there to shake your life, to interrupt your plans, to bring discomfort into your routine. But now, something begins to surface that you did not expect. The storm is not only shaking things around you, it is revealing things within you, because pressure has a way of exposing what comfort hides. When everything is stable, you can avoid certain truths. You can distract yourself. You can move forward without confronting what is unresolved inside you. But when the storm comes, distractions lose their power, and what is inside you comes to the surface. You start to see your fears more clearly. Not the ones you talk about, but the ones you carry silently. The fear of losing control, the fear of not being enough, the fear of things not working out the way you hoped. You start to notice your dependencies, what you leaned on for security, what made you feel stable, what gave you identity. And when those things are shaken, you feel it deeply. You start to recognize your patterns, how you react under pressure, how you think when things go wrong, how quickly your mind moves toward worst-case scenarios, how your emotions respond when certainty disappears. And this is not happening to expose you for judgment. It is happening to bring awareness, because what you do not see, you cannot change. And what remains hidden continues to control you without resistance. The storm brings everything to the surface, not to overwhelm you, but to show you what needs to be transformed. Because there are parts of you that cannot grow in comfort. There are areas of your life that cannot be strengthened without pressure. There are truths about yourself that you would never confront if everything stayed easy. So the storm becomes a mirror, not reflecting your situation, but reflecting you, showing you where you are strong, showing you where you are fragile, showing you where your trust is anchored. And once you see it, something begins to shift. Because now you are no longer unaware. You begin to recognize what needs to change. You begin to understand what has been shaping your reactions. You begin to see the difference between who you were and who you are becoming. And that awareness is powerful, because transformation always begins with recognition, not denial, not avoidance, but clarity. And the more you see, the more intentional you become. You start to respond differently. You start to think differently. You start to detach from patterns that no longer serve you. even if slowly, even if imperfectly. Something is changing. And that change is not random. It is being formed. Because while everything around you feels unstable, something within you is being built, something stronger, something more grounded, something that will not collapse under the same pressure again. And that leads you into the next realization. Because if something is being revealed, then something is also being constructed at the same time, something you cannot fully see yet. But that is becoming stronger with every moment you remain in this process. What is being built while everything shakes? While your attention has been on what is falling apart, something else has been happening at the same time, quietly, consistently, without needing your awareness to continue. Something is being built, not outside of you yet, not in a way that changes your circumstances immediately, but within you, in a place that cannot be seen, but will eventually affect everything you touch. Because God does not start by changing your environment. He starts by preparing you to handle what is coming, and preparation does not feel like progress. It feels slow, it feels hidden, it feels like nothing is happening. But what is being built now will determine how you stand later. Your emotional resistance is being strengthened. Situations that once would have overwhelmed you are now being processed differently. Not perfectly, not completely, but differently. There is a pause where there used to be reaction. There is awareness where there used to be impulse. Your mental clarity is being sharpened. You are starting to recognize patterns in your thoughts. You are seeing what is real and what is fear. You are learning to separate what you feel from what is true. Your spiritual depth is increasing. You are no longer depending on visible signs to stay connected. You are learning to remain even when nothing confirms that you should. These are not small changes. They are foundational. Because what is being built now is not temporary strength. It is stability. A stability that does not depend on how things are going. A stability that does not collapse when pressure increases. A stability that allows you to stand, not just when things are good, but especially when they are not. And this is why the process cannot be rushed, because what is built too quickly does not last. What is formed without pressure does not hold under pressure. So while everything around you feels uncertain, what is inside you is becoming more defined, stronger, more grounded, more aligned. And even though you may not feel it fully yet, there is a difference in you. You are not reacting the same way. You are not thinking the same way. You are not depending on the same things. Something has shifted, and that shift is not accidental. It is intentional, because what is ahead of you requires a version of you that can carry more without breaking. Not more weight, but more responsibility, more clarity, more endurance, more stability. And that is exactly what is being constructed right now. But here is where it becomes even more unexpected. Because in the middle of everything still shaking, something else begins to appear. Something that does not match the situation. Something that does not make sense based on what you are going through. Something quiet, but powerful. A peace that you cannot explain. The peace that does not make sense. There is a moment in the storm where something appears that does not match your reality. Nothing around you has fully changed. The situation is still there. The questions are still unanswered. The pressure has not completely disappeared. And yet, something inside you is no longer reacting the same way. It is subtle at first, almost easy to ignore, but it is real. A calm that interrupts your anxiety, a stillness that settles your thoughts, a sense that even without understanding everything, you are not as overwhelmed as you were before. And that does not make logical sense, because peace usually follows resolution. It comes after problems are solved, after clarity is restored, after stability returns. But this peace is different. It shows up before anything changes. It exists in the middle of uncertainty. It remains even when answers are still missing. And that is what makes it powerful. Because this is not emotional relief, this is spiritual stability. This is what happens when the Holy Spirit begins to take a place within you that your circumstances can no longer control. It is not about removing the storm. It is about creating something inside you that the storm cannot disturb the same way. There is a moment in John chapter 14, verse 27, where Jesus says that the peace he gives is not like the peace the world gives. And now you begin to understand why. Because the peace the world offers depends on conditions. But this peace does not. It does not require everything to be resolved. It does not depend on outcomes. It is not built on explanations. It is rooted in presence. And that presence changes how you experience everything. You still see the situation. You still recognize the challenges, but they no longer control your internal state the same way. Your thoughts slow down, your reactions soften, your emotions no longer dictate your every move, and in that space, something becomes clear. You are no longer being carried by your feelings. You are being anchored by something deeper, and that anchor does not move when everything else does. It holds. Even when you do not fully understand it, even when you cannot explain it, even when you question it. And the more you allow that peace to settle, the more you realize something important. You are not just surviving this storm, you are becoming stable within it. And that stability reveals something else. Because if peace can exist without change, then strength can exist without effort. And what you are about to understand next will show you that the strength sustaining you was never yours to begin with. The strength that is not yours. There was a time when you believed your ability to endure came from how strong you were, from your mindset, your discipline, your resilience. You thought that if you could just hold on long enough, think clearly enough, push hard enough, you would make it through anything. But this storm changed that. Because it brought you to a place where your own strength was no longer enough, a place where effort did not produce the same results, where pushing harder only made you more exhausted, where trying to stay in control only made you feel more overwhelmed. And yet, you kept going, not in the same way, not with the same energy, but you did not stop. And that forces a realization that is impossible to ignore. This strength you are using now is not yours. Because there were moments when you had nothing left to give, moments when your thoughts were heavy, your emotions unstable, your motivation gone, moments when, by every human measure, you should have stopped. But something in you did not. Something continued. Something sustained you beyond your own capacity, and that something is not abstract. It is not coincidence. It is the Holy Spirit working within you, not as a distant force, but as an active presence. A presence that does not wait for you to feel ready. A presence that does not depend on your emotional state. A presence that continues to operate even when you are unaware of it. The Holy Spirit does not always announce himself. Sometimes he reveals himself through endurance, through your ability to keep moving when stopping would have been easier, through your ability to remain when walking away would have made more sense, through your ability to stand even when everything inside you feels unstable. That is not natural strength, that is sustained strength, and it changes how you see yourself, because now you understand that you are not defined by your limits, you are supported beyond them. You are not restricted by what you can handle alone, you are being carried by something greater. And once you accept that, something shifts inside you again. You stop measuring your strength by how much you can control. You stop defining yourself by how much you can endure on your own. You stop carrying the pressure of having to be enough by yourself. Because you realize you were never meant to be. The strength you need is already present. It does not come from effort. It comes from connection. And that connection is not something you have to create. It is something you begin to recognize, because it has been there the entire time. And as you begin to live from that place, something unexpected happens. The storm that once felt overwhelming begins to lose its power over you, not because it disappeared, but because you are no longer the same inside it. When the storm starts losing power over you, there is a shift that happens quietly, not in the storm, not in the circumstances, but in you. The same situation is still there, the same challenges still exist, the same uncertainty has not fully disappeared, and yet something is no longer affecting you the way it used to. Before, every wave felt overwhelming. Now it still hits, but it does not take you down the same way. Before, every thought pulled you deeper into fear. Now, those thoughts come, but they do not control you completely. Before, the storm defined your internal state. Now, it is present, but it no longer dominates you. And that is the difference. Because the storm has not lost its intensity, you have gained stability. This is what happens when something deeper than your circumstances begins to anchor you. You are no longer reacting from the same place. You are no longer depending on control, on clarity, on immediate answers to feel steady. Something inside you has changed. And that change alters everything. You start to notice that your responses are different. Where you used to panic, now you pause. Where you used to overthink, now you observe. Where you used to feel overwhelmed instantly, now there is resistance. Not perfect, not complete, but real. And that resistance is power. Because now the storm is no longer dictating your internal state. It is no longer shaping your identity. It is no longer defining your reactions. It is present, but it is losing authority over you. And that is something you need to recognize, because many people wait for the storm to end before they believe they are overcoming it. But the truth is, overcoming begins before the storm is gone. It begins the moment the storm stops controlling you. And that is happening now. You are still walking through it. You are still facing it. But you are not the same person inside it. You are more aware, more grounded, more stable. And that stability is not coming from your own effort. It is the result of everything that has been built within you. The strength you did not have before. The clarity you did not see before. The peace that did not exist before. It is all coming together, and because of that, the storm is no longer what it used to be. It is no longer something that defines you. It is something you are moving through. And as this realization settles, one final truth begins to rise above everything else, a truth that connects every moment you thought you were holding everything together. Because now you begin to see, you never were. You were never holding yourself. God was carrying you. Now everything begins to make sense in a way it never did before. Not because every question has been answered, not because every situation has changed, but because you can finally see what was hidden while you were in the middle of it. You thought you were holding everything together. You thought your strength, your effort, your persistence was the reason you made it this far. But now, looking back with clarity, something becomes undeniable. You were being carried. Every moment you thought you were about to fall apart, you were held. Every time you felt like giving up, something sustained you. Every situation that could have broken you completely, somehow did not. That was not your ability. That was not your control. That was God. Not distant, not observing from far away, but present, involved, intentional in every detail, even when you could not feel him, even when you questioned everything, even when your faith felt weak and uncertain. He remained, holding what you could not hold, carrying what you could not carry, sustaining what you thought was your responsibility. And now you begin to understand something that changes how you see your entire journey. You were never alone in the storm. Not for a second. There was never a moment where you were left to figure it out by yourself. There was never a point where everything depended on you. Because even when you felt like you were carrying everything, you were being supported underneath it all. And that truth removes something heavy from your life. The pressure to be enough by yourself. The weight of thinking everything depends on your strength. The fear that if you let go, everything will collapse, because now you know you can let go and still be held. You can release control and still be guided. You can move forward without carrying the storm on your shoulders. And that is where your faith changes. It becomes deeper, not based on what you feel, not dependent on what you see, but anchored in what you now understand. God is not just present when things are good, He is present in the storm. He does not only walk with you when the path is clear, He carries you when the path disappears. And from this point forward, you do not move the same way, because now, no matter what comes next, one truth remains unshaken. You are not alone. You were never alone. And you will never have to carry anything by yourself again. If you are still here, then this message was meant to reach you, not by accident, not by chance, but because in the middle of everything you've been carrying, God knew the exact moment your heart would be ready to hear this. You have been through more than you show. You have held on longer than most would. And even when you thought you were at your limit, you didn't break. Now you know why. It was never just you. So stop for a moment and breathe. Release the weight you were never meant to carry. Let go of the pressure to have everything figured out. You don't need to control what comes next, because the same God who carried you through what you didn't understand is already ahead of you. And listen carefully to this, because this is where everything shifts. You are not coming out of this storm empty. You are coming out stronger, deeper, more aligned than you have ever been before. Not because the storm was easy, but because God was faithful. So from this moment on, walk differently, not with fear, not with doubt, but with the quiet certainty that no matter what comes, you will not face it alone. And if this message spoke to you, don't ignore it. Carry it with you, because the same presence that held you yesterday is the same one walking with you right now, and He is not letting you go.